As we know, horror is a big moneymaker at the box office. However, it never used to be that way, especially not on TV, and although these days horror is a little too intense for primetime television, some of the greatest series in history debuted there, like Alfred Hitchock Presents and of course the Twilight Zone. So today on Top 5 Scary Videos, I'm going to be counting down our list of the top 5 scariest forgotten horror TV shows. Before we begin, I want to give a big thank you to our video sponsor Shudder. Shudder is the premium streaming video service from AMC Networks and was built specifically for horror fans like you and me. They allow you to stream some of the greatest thrillers, horrors and suspense movies for just $5.99 a month or $56.99 a year, including these exclusive titles and upcoming releases: Creepshow, Horror Noir, Tigers Are Not Afraid, One Cut of the Dead and Lizzie. My personal favorite right now is Creepshow, which has just been renewed for season 2. Now if you don't want to take my word for it, Shudder has the largest and fastest growing human curated selection of horror entertainment. And on top of that, Shudder allows you to have unlimited access to stream ad-free on all of your favorite devices like iOS and Android devices. If you want to try out Shudder free for 30 days, go to shudder.com and use the promo code TOP5. I can honestly say I'm a huge fan of Shudder, and it's the only site where I can get my fill of pure horror, with movies like Scream, Train to Busan, Hell Night and The Wailing. Once again, if you want to try out Shudder for free, just head over to the website and use the promo code TOP5. Now, let's get into the video. In at 5, Monsters. Back in the day, horror anthologies used to be all the rage, from Tales from the Crypt to Tales from the Dark Side and even Friday the 13th. However, Monsters was an entirely different beast. Monsters is a horror anthology series which originally ran from 1988 to 1991. Now, as the name may imply, each episode features a different monster of the week, whether it be an animatronic puppet of a fictional children's television program or a mutated lab rat. You may also be familiar with the show because of its guest stars, consisting of David Spade, Lily Taylor, Steve Buscemi, Gina Gershon, Matt LeBlanc, and Tori Spelling. The show had some of the greatest creature makeup, which set the show apart from the rest of the horror television at the time. If you're an aficionado of science fiction and horror, this is the show for you, with not just unique creature designs but also just damn good storytelling, which makes up for the minimal budget. Now, the series was produced by Richard P. Rubinstein, the man responsible for the series Tales from the Dark Side. However, Monsters was a little different in the sense that it developed a huge audience of faithful fans who were begging for the show to return. Sadly though, the fan base couldn't save the show or overcome the biggest shortcomings, okay? It looked cheap. The series was shot on video, and the flimsy sets and plastic looking props only added to the underwhelming production design, in turn undermining the story that show was attempting to tell. However, most fans still loved the show and feel a sense of nostalgia anytime a rerun is on. Truthfully, it's definitely worth at least a look. In at 4, Creepshow 2019. Creepshow is a horror anthology released on Shudder in 2019 and is a direct continuation of the first 2 films in the Creepshow franchise. Now, the show itself follows the Creep, who tells the audience members darkly grim horror stories from the pages of the Creepshow comic book, much like the movie. In my personal opinion, there can never be enough horror anthologies, with them being my favourite type of show. Perhaps that's an unpopular opinion, but I'm sticking to it. One of the greatest movies of all time is the 1982 Creepshow, which saw George Romero join forces with writer Stephen King to pay homage to EC Comics and creature features. The film and 2019 show pairs grim tales with dark humor and garish monsters taken from the comic panels themselves. Now, the first season of Creepshow premiered on September 26th of this year and has already been renewed for a second season. God bless. The first season features 6 episodes with stories from Joe Hill, Joe Lansdale, John Skipp and others, directed by the likes of Tom Savini, one of the kings of horror. Now, as anyone who is familiar with the Creepshow movie, the Creep is a skeletal host of sorts, a silent vision that floats outside of a window in the original film. And better yet, the animatronic puppet doesn't appear to have been updated in the slightest, giving viewers a huge sense of nostalgia when entering the 2019 series. If you have yet to check it out, I highly recommend. Coming in at 3, Darkroom. Darkroom is yet another anthology horror series on our list, which originally aired on ABC from November 27th, 1981 to January 15th, 1982. The show was comprised of 60-minute length episodes which featured 2 or more stories with a wraparound segment hosted by James Coburn. For those who think the show sounds familiar but you just can't put your finger on it, you might recognize the opening narration. I quote, "You're in a house, maybe your own, maybe one you've never seen before. You feel it, something evil. You run, but there's no escape, nowhere to turn. You feel something beckoning you, drawing you into the terror that awaits you in the dark room." So spooky. In the opening, James Coburn introduces each segment from a dark room where he is either developing or handling a photograph related to the upcoming story. And sadly, this show just seems to have been forgotten about. It is so rarely mentioned. Sadly, it just came after big name shows like Tales from the Dark Side, the new Twilight Zone, and the new Alfred Hitchock Presents, resulting in Darkroom not being able to live up to its predecessors, which is a shame because it really holds its own among the formidable company. Coming in at 2, Great Ghost Tales, 1961. First debuting in 1962, Great Ghost Tales is yet another anthology series on our list, which was hosted by Frank Gallup. It was also the last regularly scheduled TV series to be broadcast live in the United States, and featured dramatizations of ghost stories and other tales of the supernatural, many of which were adapted from famous authors like Edgar Allan Poe. Sadly, the show was short-lived, much like the rest of our list. However, while on the air, it drew on talents like Robert Duvall, which is just as impressive. There's honestly not much to say about this show, simply because it lasted for such a short period of time and didn't quite hold a huge place in history. However, among horror aficionados, it definitely holds a special place. Like I said though, what made the show truly unique was the fact that it was entirely filmed and broadcast live. How insane is that? Sadly though, the show didn't stand much of a chance, especially considering it stuck out like a sore thumb, placed between the green grass of Bachelor Father and Groucho Marx. Most people just weren't tuning in. However, if you want to check it out, which I suggest you should, it is all on YouTube. God bless the internet. And finally coming in at number 1, Tales from the Dark Side. Now, at the time of its release, Tales from the Dark Side was perhaps the most popular series on our entire list and still holds a huge place in horror history, and rightly so. This, again, horror anthology was created by the king of horror himself, George A. Romero, with the show debuting in October of 1983, before being picked up for syndication the following year. Each episode was an individual short story that often ended with a huge plot twist spanning the genres of horror, science fiction, and fantasy, much like all of our previous numbers. Like a lot of anthology shows, each episode would open with a very particular opening and closing sequence, accompanied by Paul Sperrer, the foreboding voiceover. I quote, "Man lives in the sunlit world of what he believes to be reality, but there is, unseen by most, an underworld, a place that is just as real but not as brightly lit. A dark side," with the ending sequence stating, I quote, "The dark side is always there, waiting for us to enter, waiting to enter us. Until next time, try to enjoy the daylight." Honestly, this still gives me chills. In my personal opinion, I don't think there has ever been a better anthology series than Tales from the Dark Side. Or maybe perhaps Inside Number 9, but that's just a personal opinion. You should check that out. For horror fans, this series brings about a wave of nostalgia, but lucky for some, depending on how you feel about it, there was a reboot in November 2013. It was announced that there would be a reboot airing on the CW. However, it was reported in 2015 that the CW passed on the series, so unlucky for some. Well, there we have it. Do you guys agree with our list? Were there any forgotten horror shows that we missed? Leave us all your thoughts and feelings in the comments down below, and perhaps we can do a part 2. Before I go though, I just want to respond to a few comments from one of our last videos, top 5 scariest phone calls you need to listen to. Kai AJ said, "The scariest phone call I've ever had was that of a credit company telling me to pay my bill. Left me shaken. Whoa. Shooketh. Too scary." Nick0912 said, "I finally found someone paler than me and I'm Snow White level pale." Well, I'm Michael Myers level pale. Top that. Come for me. Wanna fight? Lando said, "Getting a phone call from Lucy would be a lot scarier." Preaching the hard facts here. Benjamin Inchcliffe said, "Lucy, why doesn't Jack read more comments?" It's cause he hates you. Just kidding. I don't know. You'll need to ask him. He's actually here, but I don't.
2 comment limit, that's all I do.
2 comment limit. That's what he says.
Look, you can get 2.
Whoa. And on that note, if you haven't already, be sure to give this video a big thumbs up, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss another scary vid. And until next time, see you later. And from there, cavers descend into the cavers descend into the Just speak. Also named Fantastic Pit, which is 586 which is 586. In 1997, Peru. I might be having a stroke. Like, it could be. I think it's happening.